Hello and welcome to Screams from the Center, my YouTube, which I talk about the topics that I find interesting and give you my take on them and hope you find them interesting too. On today's episode, Congressman wants an opt-out policy, Hillary Clinton runs for president, the liberal bias in the media, is it real or is it fabricated, and an insight onto Republican negotiation tactics. Thank you for joining me, and off we go. Congressman Tillis in the U.S. House recently said that we should have an opt-out policy concerning some regulations for businesses. One of those regulations that he would like to have an opt-out of policy for is employees washing their hands after going to the bathroom. He thinks that having a sign up and a regulation saying that employees must wash hands before returning to work is too burdensome for this poor restaurant or corporation owner. But having a sign that says our employees are not required to wash their hands is perfectly fine. He thinks that the free market will take care of it. Well, again, the misconception is that the free market might take care of these things, except money can buy a lot of corruption. If we recall back in the 50s and 60s, the tobacco industry had doctors going on TV talking about how healthy smoking was. Now, if there were no regulations, such as the time that happened, do you think there would be more or less smokers? Do you think if there was an opt-out policy for hand washing at a business, that there would be more or less businesses doing this? If the bosses got together from competing restaurants and said, you know what, this hand washing regulation is just too burdensome for all of us, so let's all stop doing it. That way nobody's singled out. Are we still living in a free market society then? Think about it. We have a real need for feminism in this country. Hillary Clinton recently announced that she is running for president of the United States. And we're going to see attacks more or less that are based on her gender. They're going to talk about how she's too old, how she's a woman. They're going to actually come out and say things like this. It was done in 2008 by the Republicans, so why wouldn't they do these things today? Also, if we look at the scandals that shape her candidacy, particularly Monica Lewinsky, which isn't her scandal, we're left with thinking, well, what can we do? There is a role for feminism. I am not a fan of the radical feminist movement with people like Anita Sarkeesian and the gaming movement that she's been trying to portray herself as part of. I think it is akin to professional victimhood. But there is actually anti-feminism and misogyny in this country. There are still states, there are still places where if a woman marries a man, that man legally can seize her assets, not even with notification, and especially in divorce. Those are true cases of misogyny and of problems with our system. The idea that there's a pretty girl in a video game and Anita feels slighted by this is not what feminism is about. Feminism is about equality, not about anti-sexuality. So we have to fight for actual women's rights, the right of a woman to be an equal person to a man, that in a marriage she is not a subservient character in this, that she is a partner fully, and if they do break up, there is an equal and honest division of assets. There are stories from the South all the time about women who marry someone, and then that husband takes everything she has, and she has no legal recourse. If you want to fight feminism, that's the way to do it. That is the topic to go on. Plus, we have the slight and subtle feminism, or anti-feminism, that's going to come out in the Hillary Clinton campaign. I don't need to hear about Hillary's scandals. All of these scandals are propagated by the right wing anyway, and I certainly don't need to hear about Monica Lewinsky and anything to do with Hillary Clinton. That was between Bill and Monica, not Hillary. So think about that when you hear these things like, she's too old, or she has this scandal. ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN, what do they all have in common? They are liberal bias machines. They are out to elect Hillary Clinton as president, and they are out to push the liberal agenda. Is that really true? Well, if we look at the liberal stance talking point, we find it has a few gaps in it. First of all, MSNBC, I will at least admit, they try to lean liberal. But do you see very many stories about, say, net neutrality or corporate taxes on MSNBC? No, you don't. And the reason behind that is they're partly owned by Comcast, so they're not going to talk about net neutrality. We've had several studies that climate change is virtually ignored. In fact, Fox News talks more about climate change than any of the other networks combined. And that's just to try and debunk it. So liberal bias, maybe if you're a corporate liberal, it has a liberal bias. Maybe one or two of these networks leans left. But what does leaning left mean? Leaning left means that they take certain social stances which the rich owners of these corporations really don't care about. The Koch brothers don't care about gay marriage or abortion. They may support candidates that do, but those candidates actually support their tax policies, their foreign policy, things that matter to them. So when these critics talk about these networks, are they talking about it in context of stations not reporting the Republican stance? Like, for instance, Benghazi. Is a network liberal because they don't fall for the Republican made-up scandal of Benghazi? Does that make you liberal because you're not Republican these days? Is that how we measure this sort of thing? It reminds me of a challenge that one of my conservative friends has given to me. He wants me to define centrist because I say I'm a centrist. He wants me to define this term. Well, I don't think we can define the term exactly, but I will go into that. I'm going to make a video and write an article about that. So that is my take on the networks and their liberal stance. Think about it. I recently did a video on did 47 Republican senators commit treason. Now, it was a little tongue-in-cheek. It went into a couple of actual points. It went into the law of treason and the Logan Act. Now, what I want to do is go into the underlying reason behind that letter to Iran. It all has to do with the negotiating tactics of both parties. I'm going to focus here on the Republican negotiation process. Now, our friend Sean Hannity was talking to Pat Buchanan, and Sean Hannity said that before we go to the negotiating table, Iran has to stop being the number one state sponsor of terror. They have to stop calling for the destruction of Israel. They have to stop making nuclear weapons or working on making nuclear weapons. Here's a hint. That's actually what the deal is supposed to be about, nuclear weapons. They have to achieve all of these goals before we can sit down and talk about nuclear weapons. So, in a nutshell, the Republican negotiating tactic is give me everything that I want, and then we'll talk. Except the problem that I see with that is, what are you going to talk about? You know, if Iran decided to give in to every demand that the Republicans wanted in order to just sit down at the negotiating table, what are you left to negotiate with? I don't know. I can't figure out what point is left. Now, I do know that Sean doesn't know what the details of the Iran deal that President Obama has been working out even is. Or if he does, he denies it flatly and lies about it on TV. But really, what are you negotiating over if you become a regular country? I mean, I think even at one point, one of the negotiating conditions for Republicans would be free elections. So you basically want Iran to become the United States and become our ally, and then maybe we can negotiate, what, the price of cheese? I don't get it. Negotiation is you have two parties that are opposed to each other, sometimes even on the brink of conflict, and you try to find certain common grounds, things that one side will give in exchange for things the other side give. Now, granted, whether or not you want to say Iran is 100% at fault for every ill that they've ever been accused of, that's not the point. A negotiation is not a surrender. When we negotiated with Japan to surrender, we said unconditional. That means that you have to give in to any demand that we have now and in the future, or we're going to keep fighting. And that's basically what Hannity wants. Whenever he mentions the word, or whatever a Republican mentions the word negotiate, just take that, translate it into, we want you to surrender everything, and then maybe we'll talk. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'm testing out different formats and different editing techniques to try and come up with something that is both efficient for me, convenient for me, and entertaining still. So what I'm doing right now is I am recording segments as I feel the inspiration and have the time, string those segments together and bumper them with clips like this here. So if you like it, please like and subscribe to me, and thank you and have a good